They weren't just selling her books. They weren't simply liquidating assets. They were selling her life, page by painful page, piece by precious piece, while she was trapped, deliberately weakened, utterly helpless, in her own home. Imagine that, just for a second, your safest place, the one spot on earth you feel secure, turned into a prison, your most trusted family, the people you loved, becoming your jailers, your tormentors, and your life's work. Everything you poured your heart and soul into, auctioned off, piece by agonizing piece, to strangers. It sounds like something from a gothic novel, a psychological thriller, a nightmare, right? But this wasn't a bad dream, this wasn't fiction, this happened, this is real. I'm Victoria, and you're listening to stories that, well, they tend to stick with you, stories that burrow under your skin, stories you might wish weren't real, but they are, painfully so, today's story. It's one of the most chilling I've ever encountered. It chills me to the bone, not just because of the cruelty, but because of how easily it began. It comes from a woman I'll call Miriam, a name chosen to protect her privacy, but her strength, that deserves to be known. Someone close to her shared her story with me, initially seeking, not just understanding, but maybe validation, and definitely, a warning, a stark, terrifying warning about how trust, the most fundamental human connection, can be weaponized, how vulnerability, something we all experience, can be twisted, manipulated, into a cage. Miriam, when I first heard about her, sounded gentle, perhaps even frail. The person telling me described her as quiet, almost unassuming, a retired librarian, living alone, surrounded by her books, meticulous, thoughtful, precise in her habits. You'd think, perhaps, easily overlooked. Maybe even easily pushed aside, but beneath that quiet surface, beneath the librarian's spectacles and cardigans, there was something else, something forged, decades ago, over checkered boards, in quiet rooms filled with intense concentration, a mind built for strategy, for seeing patterns, for thinking 10 moves ahead, a mind that understood patience, timing, and the devastating power of a hidden attack. She needed every bit of that sharpness, every ounce of that strategic thinking, because what her own nephew, her sister's son, and his ambitious wife did to her, it wasn't just opportunistic greed, though there was plenty of that. It was calculated, systematic, cruel, almost unbelievable in its coldness. They didn't just want her money or her beautiful historic house filled with treasures. They wanted to erase her, her presence, her identity, her very existence, make her disappear. Neatly, quietly, into the system, while they took everything, but they miscalculated. Badly. You need to hear how she fought back, how that quiet, meticulous librarian, cornered and betrayed, unleashed a storm, a quiet storm, perhaps, but utterly devastating. Subscribe right now, hit that notification bell. Make sure you don't miss stories like this, because this story, the way she meticulously turned the tables, the way she used their own greed against them, it's a masterclass in righteous fury, channeled into devastating precision, a lesson in reclaiming power when it seems utterly lost. You won't forget Miriam, I promise you that. Okay, let me take a deep breath. This one gets under my skin every time I think about it. Miriam asked for her experience to be shared, exactly as she lived it, unfiltered, unvarnished. She wants the warning to be clear, the reality stark. So, I'm going to step back now and let her tell you, in her own words, what it feels like when your world implodes, engineered by those you loved, and how, against all odds, you find the strength, the focus, the sheer will to build something new from the ashes. Here's Miriam's story. It started, deceptively simply, almost innocuously, with kindness, or what certainly passed for it at the time. What I wanted to believe was kindness. My nephew, Daniel, and his wife, Chloe, they began visiting more often, quite suddenly, it seems now, after my illness. It was a bad bout of pneumonia, the kind that settles deep in your lungs and drains every ounce of strength. It left me terribly weak, foggy-headed, disconnected. Not myself, not truly myself, not for weeks, maybe even months. The world felt muffled, distant, my thoughts moved like treacle. They brought soup, usually something bland, easy to reheat, claiming they worried I wasn't eating properly. They handled small errands, picking up prescriptions, getting groceries, things that felt monumental in my weakened state. They seemed genuinely concerned, their faces etched with worry, asking questions about my recovery. My energy levels. Daniel, my sister's boy, oh, I'd always had a soft spot for him, remembered him as a rambunctious kid, scraped knees and boundless energy. Maybe I still saw that boy, not the man he'd become, clouded by ambition and something harder, something I hadn't recognized. Perhaps, looking back, I hadn't seen him clearly for a very long time, blinded by affection, by family ties. Chloe was newer to the family, married Daniel a few years back. Always charming, effortlessly so, with a quick smile and a cascade of compliments, overly solicitous, constantly fussing, rearranging cushions, tidying things I didn't think needed tidying. Her attentiveness felt slightly smothering, even then, but I dismissed it as eagerness to please, to fit in. Looking back with the awful clarity of hindsight, the signs were there, sprinkled like poison, little comments, dropped casually into conversation, about the house. Its size, its upkeep, its undeniable market value. This old place must cost a fortune to heat, Aunt Miriam, Chloe would chirp, brightly. Such wonderful bones, but so much work, Daniel would add, shaking his head with faux sympathy. Questions about my finances, my investments, my pension, all phrased as helpful concern, designed to gauge my situation. Aunt Miriam, are you sure you're managing okay on your own? Daniel asked one afternoon, his brow furrowed. We just worry, you know, about bills, taxes, all that complicated stuff. This big old place, it really is a lot for one person, especially now, Chloe added, her hand briefly touching mine, a gesture that felt cold. Somehow, my house, this house, it wasn't just bricks and mortar, beams and plaster, it was my life, built room by room, shelf by shelf, over decades. It held the echoes of my parents. The memories of my career, the quiet comfort of solitude, filled with books, oh so many books, rare editions, signed first editions, obscure manuscripts, poetry collections, historical texts, my passion, my work, my legacy, collected painstakingly over 50 years, starting when I was just a girl, saving pocket money for a cherished volume. Each book held a memory, a connection, a piece of my soul, the worn spine of a childhood favorite. The crisp pages of a first edition discovered in a dusty shop, the inscription from a dear departed friend. I was a librarian, yes, that was my profession, my calling, but books were more than my job, they were my companions, my teachers, my history, my world. Daniel and Chloe knew this. They had to know, they'd seen the shelves, heard me talk endlessly about my finds, my treasures. They knew what the house and the collection meant to me, represented to me. Or, perhaps, they only knew what it was worth in cold, hard cash, during that foggy period, post-pneumonia, when I was still struggling to climb the stairs, still feeling dizzy spells. They came over one afternoon, a stack of papers held casually in Daniel's hand. Just some routine things, Aunt Miriam, Daniel said, his smile practiced, reassuring, too reassuring. We were thinking, while you're recovering, it might be wise to update emergency contacts, you know, just in case. And maybe, just make sure things are in order, legally speaking, he added, almost as an afterthought. Chloe chimed in smoothly, her voice like warm honey. It's just easier if we can help manage things, strictly temporarily, of course. You know, help pay bills online if you're not up to it, talk to doctors if needed, handle any urgent paperwork. Just takes the burden off you. Lets you focus purely on getting strong again. I was tired, so profoundly tired. The effort of just sitting upright felt immense. The words on the pages they presented swam before my eyes, dense blocks of legal text, power of attorney, medical directives, financial authorizations, account access forms. It seemed plausible, presented so reasonably, helpful even. My head wasn't clear, my usual caution dulled by fatigue and medication. And I trusted Daniel. He was family, my sister's son. That bond felt unquestionable, inviolable. I signed, where they pointed, my hand feeling heavy, clumsy, Chloe's expensive-looking pen, gliding smoothly across the paper, leaving a decisive black line, Daniel's hand resting lightly on my shoulder, a gesture meant to convey support, but feeling more like pressure, gidding mine just so, a momentary lapse, a signature scrawled in weakness. born of illness and deeply misplaced trust. It was the key, the master key, they needed to unlock my destruction, to dismantle my life. The change was subtle at first, insidious, easy to dismiss, small things easily explained away. My mail seemed lighter, noticeably fewer catalogues from favourite booksellers, fewer letters from old friends, colleagues from the library. Oh, just junk mail, Aunt Miriam. We tossed it to keep things tidy, Chloe would say, breezily, waving a dismissive hand, trying to reduce the clutter for you. My phone started acting strangely, calls dropping, static on the line. Probably the old wiring in this house, Daniel sighed, examining the phone jack with faux expertise. These connections get temperamental. Then, it stopped working altogether, the line completely dead. Faulty wiring, definitely, Daniel declared. We'll get someone out to look at it. Eventually. It never was fixed, cutting off my primary link to the outside world, my regular doctor, Dr. Evans, who I'd seen for 20 years. Suddenly unavailable when I needed a follow-up. He's on an extended leave, apparently, Chloe informed me, smoothly. But don't worry, we found you a new one, highly recommended. This new doctor seemed much younger, rushed, less attentive. He barely made eye contact, seemed more interested in his tablet. He changed my medications, adjusting dosages, adding something new. For anxiety, he mumbled, without asking if I felt anxious. I started feeling groggier, less sharp, more often. A heavy blanket seemed to settle over my thoughts, making concentration difficult, remembering things harder. The new doctor thinks this combination will help you rest better, promote healing, Chloe explained, patting my hand with that unnerving coolness. Rest or be sedated. Keep me quiet, manageable. The question began to flicker, dimly, in the back of my mind. Then they started suggesting I stay in my bedroom more, confining me, gently at first, just until you're stronger, Aunt Miriam, Daniel urged, his voice full of false concern. The stairs are treacherous, we don't want you tiring yourself out. It's warmer up here anyway, Chloe added. This old house is so drafty downstairs. My bedroom, a room I loved, filled with sunlight and my favourite reading chair, began to feel like a cell. My world shrank. Confined to those four walls, meals were brought up on trays, often late, often lukewarm. Simple things I wouldn't normally eat. My requests for specific books from downstairs were met with delays, excuses, or simply ignored. Their visits became less frequent. Their smiles tighter, strained. The facade of loving concern was starting to crack, revealing something cold beneath. I started hearing noises, downstairs, especially late at night. When they thought I was asleep, movement, definitely movement, hushed whispers, urgent, conspiratorial, the distinct sound of packing tape, being pulled from a roll, again and again, the scrape of furniture being moved, the thud of heavy boxes. When I asked, weakly, what was happening, they deflected. Easily, smoothly, just organising things, Aunt Miriam, finally tackling some of the clutter downstairs, Chloe said, too brightly. Trying to make the place look a bit more presentable, Daniel added, vaguely, avoiding my gaze. Clutter, my books, my carefully curated collection, my research papers, my history. A cold dread, sharp and icy, began to seep into the medication-induced fog. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was a growing certainty. Something terrible was happening, downstairs, in my house. I tried to get up one morning, determined to go downstairs to see for myself, but I felt so weak, unsteady on my feet. The room seemed to tilt, and the door, my bedroom door, strangely, seemed harder to open. Stiff, resistant. Was it locked from the outside? No, surely not. That was unthinkable. Paranoid, wasn't it? But the fear, it was real now, sharp, insistent, cutting through the haze. What were they doing? What were they really doing? One afternoon, Chloe came into the room, not with a tray, but holding a sleek modern tablet. Her smile felt predatory. Look, Aunt Miriam, we found a lovely place online, just perfect for you, she cooed, showing me pictures of a sterile-looking room, institutional furniture, bland walls, a nice assisted living facility, much easier for you, everything taken care of. All your meals prepared, lovely activities, plenty of company your own age. My blood ran cold. Colder than the dread I'd felt before. This was it, the endgame. No, I whispered, my voice hoarse, barely audible, strangled by shock. This is my home. But it's not practical anymore, Daniel said, suddenly appearing in the doorway, his voice harder now, the solicitation gone, replaced by cold authority. It's too much for you, too much for us to manage. We've handled all the paperwork, using the authority you gave us. Remember. The authority I gave them, when I was sick, confused, vulnerable, trusting. You signed everything over, Aunt Miriam, Chloe said, her voice losing its sweetness, replaced by a thin, cruel satisfaction. A triumphant smile played on her lips. Legally, it was all perfectly above board. The house, the finances, your accounts, everything. It's ours now, legally speaking, Daniel confirmed, his arms crossed, blocking the doorway. A jailer confirming the sentence. We're selling it, and the contents, the clutter. He gestured vaguely towards the rest of the house. You understand. Selling my books, my life's work, my companions, my soul. Selling my home, the repository of my entire life, leaving me, where, in some sterile facility, stripped of everything I loved, waiting to die, under their control. The fog didn't just lift, it wasn't gradual, it evaporated. Instantly, in a blast furnace of pure undiluted shock and devastating betrayal, everything became terrifyingly clear, with razor-sharp precision, the sudden kindness, the calculated concern, the stack of papers. Perhaps a forged signature page slipped amongst the genuine ones, the isolation, the mail filtering, the phone disconnection, the medication changes designed to keep me docile, the locking me in my room, the noises downstairs. It wasn't care, it wasn't help. It was a siege, methodical and ruthless, a calculated, cold-blooded takeover, executed with chilling efficiency. They saw me, not as family, not as Aunt Miriam, but as an obstacle, a problem to be managed, then disposed of, an inconvenient old woman, sitting on valuable assets they coveted, desperately, my legacy, my life's passion, reduced to inventory, items to be tagged and sold, my life deemed disposable, irrelevant, I felt. Utterly broken, shattered, for a moment, maybe two, the sheer audacity, the breathtaking cruelty, the depth of the betrayal. It was suffocating, physically painful. How could Daniel, my sister's son, the boy I bounced on my knee, how could he do this, orchestrate this? How could they smile, bring soup, pat my hand, while systematically dismantling my existence, stealing my future and selling my past? Tears welled up, hot, bitter tears of grief and helplessness. But then something else stirred, deep, deep down, beneath the shock, beneath the grief, beneath the crushing weight of betrayal, a flicker, then a spark, then a steadily growing flame. Anger, no, not just anger, rage, cold, hard, diamond-sharp rage. A fury so intense it burned away the tears, solidified the trembling. They thought I was finished, neutralized, dealt with. They thought I was just a frail, confused, medicated old woman, easily managed. Easily discarded. They forgot who I used to be before the quiet life, before the library, before the assumed gentleness of age. They forgot the hours, the days, the years spent staring across 64 black and white squares, thinking, planning, calculating, anticipating, sacrificing pawns for position, setting traps, calculating every possibility, seeing moves ahead, exploiting every weakness, every subtle tell. They forgot I played chess. At a very high level, for a very long time, and I played to win, always. My mind, which they thought they had dulled, sharpened by fury, began to work with startling clarity, locked in my room. Yes, physically weakened. Yes, isolated. Yes, but not defeated. Not yet, not by them. They controlled my environment, my food, my medication, my door, but they did not control my thoughts, my memories, my intellect. They underestimated me. Profoundly, fundamentally, that was their first mistake, their crucial error. It would be their last. They thought the isolation was complete, absolute, but they were sloppy, blinded by arrogance, by their perceived success. They left me with a small, rather outdated laptop, ancient by tech standards, but functional. For email, maybe watch some videos, if the Wi-Fi even reaches up here, Chloe had said, dismissively, tossing it onto the bedside table, assuming I barely knew how to turn it on. The Wi-Fi signal was *weak. Intermittent, unreliable. Dropping out constantly, but it worked. Sometimes, often enough, late at night, when the household bandwidth wasn't being hogged downstairs. Enough, it would have to be enough, and they didn't search my sewing basket, not thoroughly enough. Why would they? It held only tangled threads, scraps of fabric, buttons, needles, harmless domesticity, but hidden beneath a layer of quilting squares, carefully wrapped in flannel, a tiny camera, disguised as a large, old-fashioned coat button. A peculiar gadget I'd bought years ago for a craft project involving wearable tech. Then forgotten, small, easily concealed in the palm of my hand, with surprisingly decent video quality for its size, and a limited audio range, I started recording, whenever I could, anticipating their brief, perfunctory visits, short clips, saved onto a minuscule memory card, activating it discreetly when I heard their footsteps approaching, hiding it quickly when they left. Their conversations, often brief, dismissive, sometimes laced with that casual cruelty that cuts the deepest, their instructions, their admissions about controlling my medication, their justifications for keeping me confined, their complaints about the burden of it all, documenting the changes in medication delivery, the type of pills, the frequency, the restrictions on my movement, the excuses given, their growing impatience, their control. Each recording felt like a small victory, a tiny chip in their armor. I felt like a spy, an operative, gathering intelligence in enemy territory, which was my own home. It was degrading, frightening, the constant fear of discovery, a knot in my stomach, but the rage, that cold, hard rage, fueled me, sharpened my focus, pushed away the fear. Then, the books, the ultimate violation, I started hearing them more clearly, through the floorboards perhaps. Discussing specific items, talking about online auction sites, high-end platforms, specialized dealers, describing my treasures, my irreplaceable volumes, my signed first editions, my unique manuscripts, using descriptions likely gleaned from my own meticulous catalogue I kept downstairs, putting prices, cold commercial prices, on pieces of my soul, debating reserve amounts, calculating potential profits. That was the breaking point, the point of no return. The moment despair fully transformed into icy, unwavering resolve. They weren't just stealing my future, my security, my home, they were actively destroying my past, erasing my identity, liquidating my legacy, item by precious item. No, absolutely, irrevocably, not. I had to act, fast, before everything was gone, scattered to the winds, untraceable, using the weak, flickering Wi-Fi during the dead of night, hunched over the dim laptop screen. Fueled by caffeine pills I'd managed to squirrel away before they took full control of my medication, I reached out, carefully, strategically, not to the police, not yet. The paperwork, the legal authority they held, complicated everything, made it my word against theirs, the word of a confused, medicated old woman. They could spin it, manipulate the narrative, claim I was delusional, suffering cognitive decline, further cementing their control. No. I needed irrefutable proof, undeniable evidence, and powerful allies, trusted allies. I reached out, cautiously, using layers of encryption I'd learned about years ago, to my old network, my chess circle, the Knights of the Round Table we jokingly called ourselves. Back in the day, we hadn't played competitively in years, drifted apart geographically, pursued different careers, but the bonds remained, forged in countless hours of silent battle, mutual respect. Intellectual sparring, strategic minds, loyal friends, people who understood precision, patience, and the importance of a well-laid plan. An encrypted email, sent from a temporary anonymous account I created through a series of complex steps, routed through servers in multiple countries, brief, coded, urgent, containing just enough detail to convey the gravity, without revealing specifics that could be intercepted. King in checkmate position. Require endgame assistance. Urgent, Protocol Nightingale. Nightingale, Florence Nightingale, the rescuer, our old code, from decades ago, used only twice before, for needing rescue, extraction from a truly bad situation, without involving authorities immediately, discreetly, within hours, agonizingly slow hours, replies flickered back, into the anonymized inbox, cautious at first, verifying the sender's authenticity through shared memories embedded in the code. And concerned, then alarmed, then fiercely determined, position unclear, need coordinates and specifics, confirm safety. That was Elena, sharp analytical, bishop ready to move, specify target square. Arthur, ever the chess player, direct, ready for action. Rook standing by for deployment, awaiting instructions. Ben quiet, reliable, logistical genius, my network, scattered across the globe, activated, mobilized, among them was Arthur Pendleton. A former chess grandmaster I'd played against countless times. Intense, brilliant battles of will, now a renowned antiquarian book dealer, based in London, but with connections everywhere, a deep understanding of the rare book market, and a profound respect for provenance, and Elena Vance, formidable, terrifyingly intelligent, became a leading cybersecurity expert, specializing in digital forensics and tracking hidden money trails, moved like a ghost through networks. And Ben Carter, quiet Ben underestimated by many, who now ran a high-end, ultra-discreet private courier service, specializing in sensitive deliveries, complex logistics, moving assets or people, quietly, securely. They understood strategy, they understood leverage, they understood the long game, and they understood loyalty. I fed them information, bit by agonizing bit, uploading tiny files during brief windows of Wi-Fi connectivity. Downloaded the hidden camera footage onto tiny encrypted microSD cards, concealed them within the seams of old quilts in my sewing basket, made coded notes, using library cataloging shorthand, documenting every sale I overheard them discussing, every callous remark, every threat, every change in medication, every instance of confinement. I used my library skills, my intimate knowledge of cataloging, of provenance, of unique identifiers, watermarks. Inscriptions, binders' marks, I knew the exact value, the unique characteristics, the irrefutable identity of the books they were stealing, listing online, preparing to ship. I fed this critical information to Arthur, securely, painstakingly. He began tracking the online sales, discreetly, using his vast network of contacts, flagging the items, identifying the buyers, subtly warning legitimate dealers and collectors that the items were stolen property. Under investigation, potentially subject to seizure, he created a meticulous digital paper trail, linking Daniel and Chloe directly to the theft and illicit sales, building an undeniable case file. Brick by brick, Elena worked her digital magic, remotely, ethically navigating legal boundaries. She investigated their finances, using publicly available information initially, then digging deeper, uncovered the sudden influx of unexplained cash, the shell accounts. Found evidence of them systematically draining my investment accounts, liquidating stocks, transferring funds. She obtained digital copies of the signed documents, the ones I managed to photograph quickly with the button camera, analyzed the signatures, compared them to known genuine samples, found clear forensic evidence of forgery, likely Chloe's work mimicking my shaky hand. The picture became clearer, darker, more damning, a web of deceit and theft. Meticulously documented, Ben, the quiet man of action, prepared his part, the Trojan horse, the final move. We needed a way in, a way to confront them, not just me alone and weakened, but with witnesses, with undeniable proof laid bare, with legal authority present. We needed to spring the trap, decisively, irrevocably. We planned it, meticulously, over encrypted chats, late at night, move by calculated move, anticipating their reactions. Their likely defenses, like a complex chess combination, sacrificing a piece perhaps, to force an unavoidable checkmate. The trigger would be a specific, extremely rare book, a jewel of my collection, one I knew Daniel and Chloe were particularly desperate to sell, believing it would fetch a huge payday, enough to fund their new life, far away from me. Arthur, posing as an anonymous, eccentric overseas buyer known for paying top dollar, made an irresistible offer. Through a trusted intermediary dealer, playing on their greed, the offer was conditional, demanding immediate verification of the book's condition, and pickup by a bonded, highly trusted courier service, specializing in high-value artifacts, To ensure authenticity and secure transport, they took the bait. Hook, line and sinker, greed overriding caution, the lure of the big score too strong to resist, the pickup was scheduled, precisely, for a Saturday afternoon. 2 p.m. sharp, Ben's courier service, impeccably professional, would make the delivery and the pickup, but the courier, the calm professional operative, wouldn't be coming alone, not by a long shot. The waiting, the final hours, were excruciating, almost unbearable, trapped in my room, listening intently, straining to hear every sound from downstairs, hopping, praying, fearing, would the plan work, would all the pieces fall into place, could we really pull it off, what if something went wrong, what if they suspected? The rage kept me focused, anchored me. I thought about Daniel's smirk, that casual arrogance, Chloe's false sweetness. That chillingly convincing performance, the feel of that pen in my hand, the moment I signed away my life, believing their lies, the echoing emptiness downstairs, where my cherished books used to stand shoulder to shoulder. Silent companions, now gone, scattered, violated. No, they would not win, they could not win. This was my house, my life, my legacy, my history, and I was taking it back, piece by piece, if necessary, even if it meant tearing everything down. Exposing everything, the shame, the ugliness, their utter depravity. They deserved, whatever was coming, every last bit of it, the full measure. Okay, wow, let's all just take a breath together. Seriously. Inhale, exhale, can you feel that? The shift, the tension, from victim, trapped and helpless, to strategist, cold, calculating, driven by righteous fury, that cold fury, hunning itself into a weapon, aimed with deadly precision. Miriam's story, it's intense, I know, it gets heavier, darker, before the dawn, but that turning point. That moment where helplessness transforms into meticulously calculated action, it's incredibly powerful. Isn't it? It reminds us that strength, true strength, can be found, forged in the most unexpected places, even in the deepest anger, the most profound grief, when channeled correctly, when focused by injustice. If you're finding Miriam's fight for justice compelling, if you believe in the power of reclaiming what's rightfully yours, of fighting back against exploitation, hit that like button right now, let me know you're with her, rooting for her, and stick around, please stick around, because the execution of her plan, the confrontation, the final moves on the board, it's something else entirely, a moment of reckoning you won't forget. You absolutely don't want to miss how this plays out. Back to Miriam, the day the trap was sprung, Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. approaches. Saturday arrived, draped in a tense, unnatural quiet, the calm before the storm. I could hear Daniel and Chloe downstairs, moving restlessly, packing, their voices hushed but excited, expectant, discussing the money, the huge sum they expected, the final big score from the rare book sale Arthur had so cleverly engineered, planning their future, a future built on theft and betrayal, their voices dripping with avarice, entitlement, completely devoid of remorse. I stayed in my room, lying in bed, feigning the usual weakness, the grogginess they expected, listening, waiting, conserving my strength. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm, like a trapped bird beating against cage bars, every beat loud in the silence. Then, precisely at 2 p.m., the doorbell rang, sharp, clear, authoritative, cutting through the tense silence like a knife. I heard Daniel answer it, his voice attempting nonchalance, trying to sound casual, in control. Yes, courier service, a slight tremor betraying his eagerness. A calm, professional voice replied, Ben's lead operative, chosen for his unflappable demeanor, trained for discretion and managing difficult situations, delivery and pickup scheduled, for Mr. Daniel Sterling. The voice was firm, official. High-value item requires identity verification and condition assessment prior to transport. Standard procedure. Expertly delivered, footsteps in the hall, Daniel leading the courier towards the living room, where the rare book was presumably waiting, packaged, ready. Then, more voices, unexpected voices, raised slightly, questioning. What's going on here? Daniel, suddenly sharp, suspicious, the trapdoor springing shut. Who the hell are these people? Chloe, her voice rising, tight, laced with nascent panic, confusion turning to fear. That was the signal. The moment the checkmate sequence truly began, Ben's operative wasn't alone. As planned, with him, stepping calmly but firmly into the house, were two senior members of the local historical society, people who knew my collection intimately, knew me well, respected my decades of work in preserving local history, their faces already showing shock and dismay as they glanced around the room. There was also a journalist, a contact of Alina's. Specializing in elder exploitation and financial fraud cases, discreetly activating a small recording device, documenting everything, and, crucially, a pro bono lawyer, fierce, sharp-tongued, highly respected, arranged through my network, carrying a thick briefcase containing copies of Alina's forensic findings, Arthur's evidence of stolen property sales, affidavits, everything, my allies, my chess pieces, had breached the fortress. The board was now theirs. I heard commotion. Escalating, raised voices, utter confusion turning into anger, Daniel shouting, losing control. "Get out of my house, you have no right to be here," Chloe shrieking, high-pitched, desperate. "You can't just barge in here, this is harassment, we'll call the police," the lawyer's voice, cut through the chaos, calm, measured, yet utterly commanding, silencing the room. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling. Substantial evidence suggests this isn't legally your house to order people out of. We have documentation, extensive corroborated documentation, indicating probable cause for charges of fraud, grand theft, forgery, conspiracy, and felony elder abuse." Silence, thick, heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound they probably hadn't noticed in months. Then, I heard footsteps, on the stairs, measured. Steady, coming towards my room, not Daniel's heavy tread, or Chloe's quick, nervous steps. Someone else, someone familiar, someone trusted. The door opened, slowly. It was Arthur, my old chess rival, my steadfast friend, his face grim, etched with concern, but resolute, determined. He offered me his arm, a gesture of profound solidarity. "The board is set, Miriam," he murmured, his voice low, steadying. "Your move, your checkmate," leaning on him. Feeling a surge of strength flow back into me, fueled by adrenaline, vindication, and the white-hot burn of righteous anger, I walked out of that room, the room that had been my prison, down the stairs, one slow, deliberate step at a time, reclaiming my space, into my own living room, which felt alien, violated, yet still mine. Daniel and Chloe stood there, frozen, faces pale, drained of color, eyes wide with disbelief, stark terror replacing arrogance. Cornered, trapped, exposed, the Historical Society members looked around the room, visibly aghast, seeing the glaring gaps on the shelves, the half-packed boxes carelessly filled with my precious, irreplaceable treasures, murmuring to each other in distress, the journalist, discreetly filming, capturing the raw emotion, the undeniable evidence. The lawyer stood calmly, holding a sheaf of papers. A silent sentinel of justice, I stood tall, or as tall as I could manage. My spine straightening, my chin lifting, met Daniel's gaze, saw the flicker of panic, the desperate calculation, the dawning horror, then Chloe's, saw the mask of charm shatter completely, revealing raw fear and impotent fury, the fear in their eyes, seeing it, acknowledging it. It was satisfying, a cold, hard, bitter satisfaction, but satisfaction nonetheless. "My house," I said, my voice, clearer, stronger than it had been in months. Resonating in the stunned silence, each word deliberate, weighted. "My books," I continued, gesturing towards the boxes, the empty shelves. "My life," Chloe started to bluster, a last desperate attempt, grasping at straws. "She's confused, she doesn't know what she's saying, it's the medication, the illness, she imagines things." The lawyer stepped forward smoothly, instantly shutting her down. "We have detailed medical records, obtained legally, proving the unauthorized and potentially harmful changes to her medication regimen, administered by you, Mrs. Sterling, against her primary physician's orders. We have comprehensive financial statements showing systematic withdrawals, massive asset transfers, coinciding exactly with your acquisition of the fraudulently obtained authority. We have sworn affidavits from verified buyers of stolen artifacts, books and manuscripts. Traced directly back to online accounts operated under your names, using your home IP address. We have forensic analysis from certified experts, confirming the forged signatures on the property transfer documents, the power of attorney, clear evidence of intent to defraud, paper after damning paper, laid out methodically on my coffee table. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, evidence, overwhelming, undeniable, damning, irrefutable. Daniel looked. Utterly trapped, like a rat in a corner, eyes darting, searching for an escape that didn't exist, he turned to me, his face crumpling, attempting a desperate, pathetic appeal, a final, ludicrous gamble. Aunt Miriam, please, listen, there's been a terrible misunderstanding, a mistake, misunderstanding, mistake. After all this, I laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. It was dry, brittle, devoid of humor, full of ice. The only misunderstanding. Daniel was yours, I said, my voice cutting, precise. You misunderstood, profoundly, who you were dealing with. You saw weakness, vulnerability, confusion, an easy target ripe for the picking. You didn't see the Queen, positioned on the back rank, seemingly passive, but waiting patiently, to strike. I looked towards the lawyer, nodded slightly, giving the final command. Proceed, I said, my voice like ice, sharp and final. The fallout was swift, brutal, absolute, just as we planned. The lawyer calmly contacted the police department, outlining the situation, the evidence, the presence of suspects, requesting immediate assistance. Within 20 minutes, marked cars arrived, sirens off, discreetly. The officers listened patiently, reviewed the core evidence presented by the lawyer, spoke briefly with the Historical Society witnesses, observed the scene. Daniel and Chloe were read their rights, cautioned, and escorted out of my house, my asterisk house, in handcuffs, their faces a grotesque mixture of shock, utter humiliation, disbelief, and impotent sputtering rage. It wasn't a quiet arrest, despite the initial discretion. The journalist, doing their job, made sure of that. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Word spread like wildfire through the quiet street. The story broke, explosively, locally at first. Then picked up by regional news, then wider online, fueled by the compelling narrative, the shocking betrayal. Respected retired librarian victimized by greedy relatives in elaborate fraud scheme. Elder abuse ring exposed, chess mastermind Aunt Foyle's nephew's plot. Family betrayal, couple arrested after attempting to sell off aunt's rare book collection. The headlines were merciless, relentless, painting Daniel and Chloe exactly as they were, avaricious, cruel. Predatory, their carefully constructed reputations, their social standing, shattered, instantly, irrevocably, gone in a maelstrom of public condemnation. Legally, it was no contest. The evidence was overwhelming, airtight, the fraudulent documents, the power of attorney, the property transfer, all swiftly overturned by the courts, declared null and void, my home, my assets, my finances, everything restored to my sole control. Criminal charges followed, swiftly. A raft of serious felonies, fraud, grand theft, forgery, elder abuse, conspiracy to defraud, false imprisonment. They faced significant prison time, serious prison time. The judge, appalled by the details, was reportedly considering the maximum sentences. Their arrogance, their greed, their breathtaking cruelty led them directly, inevitably, to utter ruin. They lost everything, their social standing, their assets, their freedom, their future. Their lives as they knew them were over, all because they underestimated a quiet librarian who happened to think 5 moves ahead, even from a locked room, recovering the sold items. The pieces of my soul they'd scattered was harder, much harder, and more painful. Arthur worked tirelessly, relentlessly, using his network, his expertise, contacting buyers, auction houses, negotiating returns, explaining the situation, leveraging legal threats where necessary. Some items were recovered quickly, bought by reputable dealers who returned them willingly once the theft was proven. Others were lost forever, sold on too quickly, disappeared into private collections overseas, untraceable, leaving permanent gaps on my shelves, permanent scars on my heart. But many were recovered, slowly, painstakingly, piece by precious piece, returned to their rightful home, my house felt empty, violated, haunted for a long time. The ghosts of their presence, their calculating whispers, their false smiles, lingered in the corners, tainted the air, but my friends, my network, my knights, rallied around me, fiercely, protectively. Arthur, Elena, Ben, members of the Historical Society, old colleagues from the library, even neighbors who finally understood what had been happening behind closed doors. They helped me cleanse the space, physically airing out rooms, rearranging furniture, packing away anything that reminded me too strongly of Daniel and Chloe, and emotionally, sitting with me, listening, offering quiet support, sharing stories, reminding me of who I was before and who I still could be. They helped me refill the shelves, tracking down replacements for some lost volumes, helping catalogue the returned items, rebuilding the collection, not just as it was, but as something new, something resilient. It wasn't the same. It could never be exactly the same. The violation left an indelible mark. I wasn't the same. How could I be? The trust, once broken so violently, so intimately, by family, doesn't simply mend, it scars deep. I became warier, more guarded, less open. The world felt less safe, but also, strangely, stronger, more irresolute. I discovered a ruthlessness within myself, a capacity for cold, calculated fury, deployed strategically, without apology, that I hadn't known existed, or perhaps had kept deeply buried. It wasn't comfortable, knowing that part of me, that icy core of strategic vengeance, but it was necessary for survival, for justice. It was survival against predators who wore familiar faces. It was justice, hard-won, meticulously planned, utterly deserved, my justice, executed on my terms, according to my plan, later, much later. Using some of the recovered funds, restitution ordered by the court, and significant contributions from my network, my friends, I established a small foundation, the Nightingale Fund, apt I thought, dedicated to providing pro bono legal aid, strategic planning assistance, and rapid response support for seniors facing exploitation, fraud, abuse, fighting back, strategically, effectively, for those who felt silenced, trapped, isolated, gaslit. Just as I had been, turning my pain, my rage, my ordeal, into purpose, into a shield for others, my house is quiet again now, genuinely quiet, peacefully quiet, filled with books, old friends returned, new acquisitions carefully chosen, filled with memories, some still painful, sharp-edged but increasingly overshadowed, by resilience, by survival, by the knowledge that I fought back, and won. They tried to erase me, my identity, my legacy, my history. Instead, they forged me into something new, something harder, perhaps, something warier, something unbreakable, something they never saw coming, not in a million years. Checkmate. And that's where Miriam's account ends. Wow, just wow, every single time. It leaves me speechless. For a moment, the level of betrayal, targeting family, someone vulnerable, it's staggering, isn't it? It's almost incomprehensible, targeting someone during their most vulnerable moments, physically weak, emotionally trusting, using cherished family ties, weaponizing love and history, as tools for manipulation and theft, selling off a life's passion. A soul's collection, piece by piece, like vultures picking over a carcass. It's monstrous, truly, there's no other word for it, but the way Miriam fought back, that transformation, using her intellect, her unique skills, her hidden strengths, that incredible chess mind, seeing the board, seeing the moves, turning their own overwhelming greed, their arrogance, their fatal underestimation, against them, like a judo master, coordinating that network, activating those loyal friends, executing that intricate multi-layered plan, with such precision, the confrontation, the controlled reveal, the exposure, the swift, uncompromising justice. It's breathtaking in its intensity, its cold effectiveness. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the assumptions we make, constantly, about older people, about quiet people, about those who seem unassuming on the surface, about the fire that can burn, the steel that can exist, beneath a calm, gentle exterior. Miriam's story is a stark, chilling reminder of the darkness humans are capable of, the depths of greed and cruelty, even within families, perhaps especially within families, but it's also, profoundly, a testament to incredible resilience, fierce intelligence, to the undeniable power of righteous anger, channeled into focused strategic action. Was the justice harsh? The public humiliation? The lengthy prison sentences, the complete destruction of their lives? Absolutely. It was severe. Was it necessary? Was it proportionate, given the depth of the betrayal, the calculated systematic cruelty, the intent to utterly erase her? I think Miriam would say yes, unequivocally yes. What do you think? I genuinely want to know, was it justice, pure and simple, the scales balanced, or was there an element, a satisfying element, perhaps, of vengeance, of retribution? And does it even matter? When the cause is so just, when the provocation was so extreme? Let me know your thoughts, down in the comments. I really want to hear what you feel about this one. It raises so many complex questions. It's stories like Miriam's, harrowing but ultimately empowering, that need to be heard, that deserve to be shared, stories of survival, of fighting back against overwhelming odds, of reclaiming power, reclaiming identity, even when it seems utterly, hopelessly impossible. Thank you for listening, for bearing witness to her incredible, terrifying, and ultimately triumphant journey. If this story resonated with you, if it moved you, angered you, inspired you, if you believe in the power of fighting back against injustice in all its forms, please share this video, share Miriam's story, help get her warning and her hard-won victory out there. It might help someone else recognize the signs, find their own strength, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, join our community here. We share stories that matter, stories that make you think, feel, question, stories you won't forget. I'm Victoria. Thank you so much for being here, for listening with such open hearts and minds. Take care of yourselves, and please look out for each other. Especially, look out for those who might seem vulnerable. Quiet, easily overlooked, they might just have a checkmate, planned, waiting, ready to be deployed. Until next time, be kind, be vigilant, be strong.